All right, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from, and welcome to our NFP exploratory session. I hope everybody's doing very, very well this morning, or I guess whatever time zone you're in. Um, just getting my chart set up here. Got up a little bit later than I'd like. So far, gold looks like it could be in a good zone for a setup, as you know, because I think yeah, most everybody here normally attends these sessions. I will be monitoring gold, oil, the Dow, and the DAX, as well as the S&P 500 on the 15-minute. That's kind of our standard setup for news trading. And of course, if you guys are monitoring any other instruments, forex pairs, etc., please let me know what's going on, and that way we can kind of share information. It does look like most of these instruments stay in a good position because they are close to the dynafibs. And what we like to see is we like to see a bit of flatness before the news, and we essentially trade the breakout from that with a good signal. If we get a good signal that corresponds at the end of the first 15 minutes after the news, we take it. Of course, um, caveat is, at the moment, for me personally, I think you guys can make this decision for yourself. I'm still trading on demo. The plan is to potentially go live in 2016. So now I don't imagine that this NFP holds particular significance. But as with any large, news announcement, the volatility that follows from it is really what we're trading anyway. And of course, if there is a big deviation from what's expected and we get a big move in the market, that simply benefits our news trading strategy. So looking at gold, it looks like we're already took a pop. This would be normally kind of the signal we'd be looking for to trade, actually. It seems a bit early. I don't know if the news has been prematurely leaked or if this is just trading prior to the news. So this is actually an interesting situation because we have seen in our news trading before where the news was leaked early, and some of the market participants got a hold of it. So although I'm not going to take the trade because essentially we would be taking the trade right as the news is supposedly released, I am curious to see if this has bearing on the outcome and if it would be beneficial at some point in the future to trade the signal rather than the timing. Of course, we'd have to test this a few times on kind of an early move because a lot of times we just get really, really flat until the actual news and then the jump. It looks like on gold right now, this is certainly, but it's a good example of what a good signal would look like. And we're getting a breakaway from the dynafibs on the 15-minute Fibmaster. We've got a nice steep Williams. We've even got bearish trend bar there. We've got a nice shadow candle and red bar signal there. So everything does seem to be good to go as far as a signal goes. Just kind of have to see where it is by the end of the 15-minute candle. Looking at oil, we're kind of bearish on one side on the Fibmaster and bullish on the other on Momentum Master, so certainly there's no signal there yet, but we are close enough. I like to start from the dynafibs. In any case, I want us to be in the dynafibs or touching the dynafibs before the news and then break out one side or the other, confirm it with Momentum Master, and take the trade. The Dow kind of looks a little bit opposite of where gold is. It seems that, prior to this candle, the last 15-minute candle, we did have a buy signal here on the 15-minute, and, had this been, post-news, this would be a good buy signal. we have a super convergence zone, which of course once again has done a really nice job of identifying important support and resistance, as well as a bearish dynafib. And so, again, we are close to the dynafib region, so we could get a pop in either direction. This one certainly looks bullish. Now, if gold is heading down and the Dow heads up, what we know about that is that it's a non-dollar dominated move, and it's a risk move. So people are adding risk to their portfolios by taking on the Dow, and they're dumping gold to kind of take away the safety asset. Of course, when we see them move in the same direction, we know that it is more of a dollar-based move, as they both react to the dollar about the same most of the time. And interestingly enough, which this is a bit of a surprise to me, we see the DAX more on the bear side here on the 15 minutes. Now, we generally do see the DAX and the Dow pretty much trading kind of in the same direction. So we have the situation where this looks almost like it's a precursor to a sell trade. And I would anticipate that the S&P looks very similar to the Dow, and it does. So again, really, really nice pre-drop setup here, particularly for a bullish trade. A nice pop from this region here on the S&P 500 would definitely indicate a buy trade. Of course, keep in mind that we're not just restricted to that just because we see bullish now. We could have a very, very sharp move down, and that could give us a sell signal. Oh, okay, so I have a comment here. FTSE similar to DAX, also on bear side. Okay, that's interesting, and that's something that we have observed lately with the FTSE in particular, is that it's been kind of the more bearish one. But I'm actually quite pleased to see that the FTSE and the DAX are in similar trading parameters, because when we see the S&P 500 and the Dow kind of on different footing, it makes me really, really leery of the market. I'm much more comfortable seeing a situation where the DAX and the DAX and the FTSE are on similar footing, as well as the S&P 500 and the Dow. So if you can keep an eye on the FTSE for us. Actually, you know what? I'll get a FTSE chart set up too. I'm not going to take any chances because it's not bogged down right now, and that's something that does happen sometimes on my end. We've got about 4 minutes till the news. I got all my charts set up, so we'll just have to see. So far, the gold sell signal is looking like a good signal. This is going to be very, very interesting to put in our notes to see if this is actually something that we can do. Again, trading before the news is supposedly released is always dangerous. I'm just curious to see if this is a flash in the pan, and the market goes the other way, or if this is really just an early lead, and we continue. So, and that's the nice thing, since we're still trading demo, of course we can take the trade and not really worry about it. We're not going to be losing any money even if it spikes out 1,000 pips to the other side. So I may take a very, very small position here prior to the news coming out if we maintain this signal. We're not seeing confirmation on other instruments quite yet, but certainly this is what we would be looking for post-news and the first 15 minutes after the news. Okay, we're at the 2-minute mark. I'll check and see. anything else interesting has happened today in the news. I didn't look at the markets, Friday markets. I actually went to bed quite early. So we've got the normal stuff, Canadian dollar as well. Is anybody looking at the U.S. CAD? I know some of our news traders really do focus on that one. It is a good volatile pair to trade during news sometimes. So I'm just wondering if anybody's trading U.S. CAD as well, or Euro CAD for that matter. So we had better than expected pound numbers earlier. I wonder if that. Interesting. This is fascinating. As we pull within 1 minute of the actual news, gold has retreated, actually, completely in the other direction. But this kind of goes part and parcel with, our strategy and our approach. Even on the 1 hour, we never take the trade before the candle close, right? So, I mean, even in this 15-minute environment, it seems to be, true as well, that, kind of our setups don't work very well unless we take it, within the last few seconds of the candle. So this is very interesting. Certainly not a sell setup anymore. We're about to get the news release here in just a few seconds. About 10 seconds. And there we go. So ended up actually giving us kind of a weaker bearish signal. Didn't hit the Williams. So not really what I would call a very desirable sell entry. Not as desirable as it was looking. However, it still was a sell setup. So gold, if it continues on down, we will be shorting. And of course, through the actual news release, my MetaTrader is getting a little bit sluggish, which is kind of normal. Looking at oil, it's a little bit on the bearish side so far. We would need quite a bit more sell-off for it to happen. Woo! Dow has popped off to the downside. And this looks like this is going to be a sell trade, assuming that within 15 minutes we remain in this position. We've got a nice little breakout to the sell side. Again, that's why it becomes very, very dangerous to look for trades prior to a release. They can certainly give you the wrong impression of where the market will go. Of course, we don't really know that until the first 15-minute candle is over, because it could shoot back up in the other direction. But at the same time, I mean, the distance between the 2 points would have probably sunk your trade anyway. Yeah, that we're talking about 115 pips. That would have been unlikely that you would have given it the correct protection, which of course is understandable. Let's go ahead and take a look at the numbers themselves. See if we got any major deviations. Okay, looks actually like NFP was a bit of a deviation by about almost 100,000, so 90,000 deviation. 271,000 jobs added, which is better than expected. Unemployment rate at 5%. This is quite interesting. If anybody lives in the United States with me, you'll know that the 5% unemployment rate is complete garbage. That's such a fabrication. The real unemployment rate is at least double that. I would put it at 10, 12%. Better wage growth, yes, and that's been one of those important factors throughout this, throughout the Great Recession. One of the things that has been dogging the U.S. economy has been wage growth. So I like these comments. Likelihood of interest rate rise in December. FOMC now a lot more likely based on these numbers. Yeah, it certainly seems that, based on this NFP, the U.S. economy, and because the Fed does, their whole idea is to help and support a good a good employment market, this would indicate potentially that the rate hike should be coming, which in that case we should see a big sell-off in the Dow and a potential upswing in gold. But ooh, look at gold. My goodness. Hello. And that's probably in reaction to the positivity of the news, right? Um, my. So our little sell trade prior to the news would have yielded a big result this time. Interesting. 157 pips so far on this single 15-minute candle. I have to see where it finishes up, but that's quite a drop. Let's take a look at oil. Oil's looking like we'll have a bearish signal by the end of the candle. Dow looks like we will be putting in a buy order if it continues in that direction. How about the DAX? Ooh, the DAX has popped. Looks like we'll have a buy trade in that direction. And S&P should be similar to the Dow. Yep. So again, around the U.S. news, I prefer, if possible, to take my index trades on the U.S. Indices. But certainly, if we're getting a good reaction on the DAX, I'm happy to take the DAX as well. How about the FTSE, guys? Has there been a big pop in the FTSE? Whoever was monitoring the FTSE? FTSE popped as well. Okay, so the FTSE and the DAX are running together, which is great. That's exactly what we want to see, kind of like sister markets. And as we kind of look at the, if we were to draw a Venn diagram of the way index markets work, we have our broad index markets, which include everybody, and then we have little clusters, which are kind of our regional markets. And so we kind of want to see the Euro markets trade together, U.S. markets trade together, Asian markets kind of trade together. This gold sell-off, though. But I am going to make a note of that, that we did have kind of a weak sell signal, immediately prior to the news. So I'm not sure if that actually does reflect a leak or not. Because certainly we saw this, really kind of trade on before the news. It was really kind of unique to gold, actually. So it looks like we'll be going short oil in the current setup. Take another look at the Dow here. Very interesting. We've got quite a bit of volatility on the Dow so far. We had the indicated sell, and then it went, looking like it was going to be a buy, and now we're back on the sell side again. So I'm not sure if this is just a struggle with the dollar now, because if both the Dow and gold go down, that would indicate that we have dollar strength. Now, what's interesting to note is the last FOMC, what we saw was, remember, it was kind of a flip-flop of what we're seeing now. We saw a dollar-based move initially, and then we saw a risk-based move secondarily, so that we saw all of them kind of move in the same direction at first, and then the secondary move was when people realized, hey, what this means is, that, we can trade this on a risk basis instead of a dollar move. So the dollar was the initial reaction, and then the risk was kind of the secondary move. I'm not sure if we're getting kind of the opposite here, or if it'll change, just as we realized. Dollar index popped 99.25 as high as 99.44.5. Wow. So we have seen a move shift in the dollar. Now what ends up happening is that the initial reaction to positive news for the U.S. does strengthen the dollar, and that kind of plays very, very well into the fact that the rates may rise, and so that should strengthen the dollar as well. We'll have to see if market participants change kind of their view on it. The DAX certainly looks positive to me. For me, I would also like to see it close above the super convergence zone. That would be that would kind of be the game on area for the buy trade for me. Last cross channel RSI was bullish. We've got a nice bullish signal on Momentum Master. We are outside the buy zone on Williams, but added a little bit of buying pressure continued into the end of the candle in the next 6 minutes. This will probably reach, because we're coming all the way from the top of the sell zone, this will probably reach into the buy zone if we continue to get strength. If not, and we close into a super convergence zone without Williams confirmation, then that would be a no trade signal. So again, just because we're getting price action to the upside doesn't mean it's a signal. We have to have a good looking signal, and I suggest that with the news trading on the 15-minute, similar to what we look for on the 5-minute, that it should be an excellent signal only, and we shouldn't be taking marginal signals. So if it's a really solid signal on one side or the other, then we take it. If not, we leave it alone, because certainly we've seen in the past that marginal signals do not usually produce consistent results, whereas the strong signals in the past have produced quite consistent results, I think to the tune of about 80% win rate. So you can see that the Williams is climbing higher, and this tends to strengthen the idea that we will get a bullish trade out of this. I have a comment here, FTSE not so positive, more similar to the Dow now. So is the DAX kind of the rogue here? Very interesting to see that phenomenon. I want to take a look at the NASDAQ to see if we have any deviation between the U.S. markets there, and certainly not. Certainly the NASDAQ actually looks like a better signal to go short for the moment, at least. We've got about 5 more minutes, so we'll have to see. Certainly there is a major deviation between what we're seeing on the DAX and what we're seeing, I suppose, on the other index markets. Now, comparatively speaking, the DAX long looks like a much higher quality long than the U.S. markets look short. However, they are both decent signals. It's just that we have such bigger wicks to the downside on U.S. markets, whereas DAX really kind of looks like a no-doubter to the upside. Well, a bit of a wick on the one side, but still not enough to scare me out. Be keeping an eye on both the Williams and the super convergence zone on the DAX by the end of the candle. Gold, let's see where we're at. What the hell? Oh my goodness. Where are we at? 200 pips already? It's funny because, this is the one we were really talking about potentially taking 178 pips. So this is the one we were talking about potentially taking a trade prior to the news. It dried up a little bit, but geez. I don't know. That might be something to add to the exploration. And again, this takes the news trading to a completely different, risky kind of level. Putting in any trades prior to the release of news, simply because with volatility and against you, you can jump your stop. So I mean, if we ever were to enter pre-news, I think it would have to be on a very small trade, or not at all. It seems enticing to be able to grab 180 pips within a few minutes after the news. Of course, we always have to consider the alternative. So I suggest that we explore this further and see what kind of consistency we get on these kind of pre-signals. It's really the first time I've taken notice of something like that, so obviously it doesn't happen that often. But in the case of a potential leak of the news, we could certainly trade in the direction of that leak. Let's see. New spin is the report is a one-off and not a trend. Ah. I got about 30 seconds. This is actually a very difficult decision for me. Because I don't really want to long the DAX and short the S&P 500. Neither of them are hitting their Williams. But it looks like the DAX is getting weaker. S&P 500 looks pretty solid. So I'm going to short the S&P 500. I'm going to short oil, and I'm going to short gold. And I know it's it's almost 200 pip breakout on gold. So it would have to be a very, very big continuation. Oh, hold on. Be right back. Okie dokie. So I've shorted gold, shorted oil, and shorted the S&P 500. Looking at the quality of the setup, to be honest with you, oil looks the best. Um, the concern of mine, obviously, is that we're right above a super convergence zone. But again, we didn't stop there, so we may just punch through it. And again, the reason I say oil looks the best is that several reasons. A, we started on the bearish side, put pressure into Dynafibs, had a nice medium-sized rejection, very solid signal momentum master with red shadow candles. We actually had a click into the Williams sell zone. Last cross was bearish trend bars. RSI looks good. So certainly as far as the anatomy of a setup, the oil is the best setup per se. In case anybody's wondering why I took the S&P 500 over the Dow, is because the Dow had, kind of closed right above a midterm fib here. Now, of course, that could reflect in the S&P 500 as well, because, they do tend to move together. The DAX move, again, didn't hit Williams and was a bit weak above the super convergence zone. Now, had I seen, the bullish kind of move in the other index markets, I would have longed the, I don't know, maybe I should have longed the DAX anyway. But again, I don't like to take the contra-indicated trades, because then one, most likely one will win, one will lose, and then it'll just be kind of a break-even situation unless it moves a lot. So far it seems that the DAX is moving into positive territory, so it seems like it's continuing with its movement, and the S&P seems to be slipping a little bit, so it's continuing in the right direction. That's fascinating. Of course, fundamentally speaking, if the market clicks into gear that the rate hike is coming, this would be negative for the index markets, particularly the U.S. index markets, right? So that would, based off of the news, fundamentally speaking, we should be seeing a sell-off there. But anything can happen on Friday, particularly NFP Friday. Oh, and gold again. This is one of those things that even though we had a big move um, in reaction to the news, doesn't mean that we can't have a big follow through as well. And we don't have a big follow through so far. I'm just saying. And actually, at 1089.30, we are getting very, very close to a major area of support resistance at 1087. So. Be interesting to see if gold gets down to 1086, 1087 area, and then maybe 1081, 1082. If it reaches 1081, 1082, then we will have a lot to talk about next week. Let's see here. FTSE short is doing nothing but in line with the U.S. indices, and also gold falloff could result in many miners getting sold, which are heavy weighting in the FTSE index. So I will see how this plays out. Good point. Good point. Yeah, because I mean we're talking about some very, very low gold levels, and it's just like one of those things. As commodities price increases, it's more attractive for there to be capital investment in producing more of it. Just like when oil prices were high, the major oil conglomerates, I mean, they were spending ridiculous amounts of money looking for new oil, and it's some of the smaller companies kind of ride in on the tailwind of that, but when the commodity price gets crushed, they're the first ones to close up shop because they don't have as much cushion, and they're essentially, their capital investment relative to what they can pull out of, the commodity, their margins get killed. And I know that's happening right now to a lot of smaller players in oil, and so, with the plummet in gold, we would see that as well because gold mining is very capital intensive, and if you can't take your product to market to outweigh the costs of mining it, there is no point in being in business. So really, it's just the big boys that can stay through these kind of downswings, and a lot of times that's how consolidation in industry comes about. So that's a really, really good point. And so, gold price heading down could weigh heavily on that FTSE index, as you've indicated. And of course, it also suggests a stronger dollar. Stronger dollar should push our oil trade down, should push our, our U.S. index trade down. It looks like we're just kind of in a holding pattern, almost at break even on the S&P 500. So the S&P 500 does seem a little bit weaker. NASDAQ also sell signal, but closed right above a midterm fib. So not exactly the kind of setup we want. DAX has seen a little bit of a pop after the signal, although it seems to be coming back a little bit down. So I'm curious to see if that was the correct decision. Again, I usually like to go with the predominant kind of flow when we look at, that's why it's good to compare multiple markets, because we want to see how things are moving as a whole, and it did seem that we had a predomination of sell signals, although the buy signal on the DAX is, would be working like a charm right now, for potential, what is that, 30, yeah, 30 points would be at the best. Gold trade is up 30, almost 33 pips at the moment. Now we're getting close to 1087. I'm going to go ahead and hit break even on this. So at least with gold, looks like we've got a no loss situation there. Now I'm going to go ahead and take half the trade off at about 40 pips. Let the rest run. Oil's underwater a bit. Dow's getting weaker. DAX is getting stronger. S&P's almost back at break even. And NASDAQ's kind of getting weaker but in a holding kind of position. So oil seems to be really the only kind of negative territory trade that we took so far. If we end up getting 2 out of 3, I'd still call that a big win for an NFP trading session, that's for sure. Of course, we'll have to see how these run out, but because in the past, during our session, we get the setups. Sometimes it takes a couple hours before they kind of play out. And for my final target on gold, I'm just going to shoot it out there at 1083. I'll be completely satisfied by that result. May end up being a very conservative area, but I think with our knowledge in gold about where the supports are, that it might be kind of tough to break through 1082. So I think 1087 would be interesting to see broken, or 1086, but that's why first profit target's just a bit above 1087. Oh, Dow has turned negative. So this trade is now, had we shorted the Dow, that would be in positive. Oh my goodness, look at the DAX. So interestingly enough, we could have longed the DAX and shorted the U.S. markets and been ahead in both positions. Fascinating. 65 pips up on the DAX. Fascinating. Normally don't, I don't recall seeing this. That's a good point. One of our members is saying weak euro against the dollar helps the DAX. Good point. Oh, our S&P trade is nicely in profit now. So 2 out of 3 trades are sitting on nice profit. And had we taken the DAX, we'd be 3 out of 4. I don't know, maybe some of you guys did take the DAX. And the oil trade isn't a loser yet, but it's underwater. So technically, if we look at just the signals on the instruments that I have on my charts, we have gold, oil, Dow, DAX, S&P, and NASDAQ. Out of 6 instruments, 5 of them are in profit right now from the signal. 5 out of 6 instruments in profit. That is a very, very good result so far. One of the 3 trades I took is already at break even. We'll have to see the run out. Oh, and oil is in profit now. Fantastic. So 6 out of 6 trade signals are profitable, and that is fantastic. Excellent. Excellent indeed. Yeah, gold's kind of stalling where we would expect it to. And our I'll trade them on about 30 pips right now. Dow has got a max of about 30-ish. It's pulling back up a little bit. I want to see how far the DAX has run. Yeah, about 60-65 pips on the DAX for the positive gain there. Okay, and that's our candle close for the second 15 minutes and essentially the hourly setup. So what we're going to do before we finish the session here is we'll take a look at the hourly setups. And then we'll wrap things up. Okay, so looking at gold on the hourly, this definitely is an hourly setup. You can see that we're in the trading bands. We've got a good push away. We were at support and resistance. Certainly everything here looks like a bearish signal. Of course, I'm glad we're in the trade already, but you know, just looking at the hourly, I always like to compare them because even though the news approach is the 15-minute approach, you know, sometimes we see good solid signals at the end of the hour. Oil is now moving ahead, looking really, really good by about 40 pips. So far, hitting down on 45.31. Probably it's a good first take. That's good first take profit. So I'm going to go ahead and unload half the trade at our midterm fib, and so that's pips in the bank, and another really good result from news trading. It's kind of hard for me to want to continue to do this on demo after you know how many or how consistent it's been for our news trading. But I'm going to stick to the plan of 2015 demo, 2016 go live. Oil does, from the momentum master side, look like a decent signal. Seems getting hung up. Give me just a second. The oil trade does look like a decent signal from the sell side. On the hourly, Dow barely broke through its midterm fib. Looks a bit kind of sketchy here. And the hourly on the Dow does look a little bit questionable. Not terrible, but a little bit questionable. It barely broke through that midterm fib and bearish Dynafib. So, but we did get Williams confirmation, and it was a good signal on Momentum Master. So we'll have to see how that one plays out. Be monitoring it obviously. throughout the session. And when I post the video of this session, I'll give my follow-up report of where the trades ended up that I took. DAX looks like a good buy signal. Oh, on both. Look at that. Okay, so from the hourly standpoint, it looks like a decent signal on the DAX. S&P 500 trade we're in, still in profit, by the way. Yeah, it looks like a decent signal on the 1 hour on the S&P 500. And finally the NASDAQ. Again, Momentum Master looks like a solid signal on the hourly. And decent signal on the hourly as well for the NASDAQ. All right. Again, I'm very, very impressed with these results, guys. I've already put some profit in the bank. Everything else looks pretty good. Are there any questions, comments, anything you guys want to discuss or look at before we wrap things up? Oh, okay, I like this. For completeness, I also took the FTSE demo, currently breaking even, but hourly is supportive, if not a signal. Okay, so we have a FTSE signal supporting the 15-minute breakout, if not a signal in its own right. And that kind of goes along with what we're seeing in the other index markets. One thing we may be able to infer, and again, I'm just throwing this out there, but we don't really care about the size of candles on breakouts with these kind of bigger news trades. We might not want to care about contraindicated trades as well. I mean, against kind of regional markets, I don't think I can ever long the Dow, short the NASDAQ, or long the FTSE, short the DAX, but maybe we should kind of just take trades in line with the signals that we see, and just as long as they're regionally confirmed, then maybe consider it, because that DAX signal certainly was a good signal, and it's certainly bearing fruit. But I'm very happy with the trades I took. We'll have to see how they end up, but you guys, by all means, shoot me some emails or something. Let me know how your trades turned out, and I'll put it in the report. So just want to say thanks a lot for attending this session. Again, I think this is probably one of my favorite news trading sessions, because kind of we know what we're doing now with the system and news, and it's kind of really enjoyable to see things work out the way it's been working out. Certainly it's which is, again, I'll say it every time, a really big shock to me how well the system does to trade news, but I'm really happy it does. So I wish you guys a phenomenal type of day, and I look forward to catching you guys when we do our outlook over the weekend. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, live trading, here we come. Absolutely. Yeah. Excellent. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. It was a lot of fun, and thanks guys for making it that way, because certainly it wouldn't be nearly as fun if I was sitting here by myself. So I appreciate it, all the input, and have a great one. We'll see just how much profit we get out of this. Take care.